Hi, and welcome to History 101. We're going to start with point one to talk about prehistory, particularly the Stone Age. This is where every History 101 or ancient history class usually starts to talk about what developed before written history. Why do we start with prehistory? Well, usually we talk about maps and timelines and try to give you an understanding of really how vast the prehistoric records are compared to our ancient records, modern records, medieval records, Age of Enlightenment records, and we also want to give you an idea of how different disciplines come together to work hand in hand to tell you the story of us, our planet, and our humanity. And also because our written history begins with civilizations that are already in place. How did they get there? We want to know. So, let's do a little housekeeping and talk about how to read a timeline. Now, if you look at the timeline here at the bottom of the page, we have in the middle year 1. Just a quick note, there is no year 0. We go from 1 BCE to 1 CE. Let's talk about those initialisms. We use BCE, before the Common Era, to talk about anything that happened before year 1. Anything after is the year 200, the year 1989, the year 2019. And you know this, but we call that Common Era. So, as far as the calendar that we use in history, we use the Gregorian calendar. It's a calendar based on the 12 months of the year. And of course, the little extra time at the end of each day to give us a quarter of a day leap year every 4 years. And it's used as an international calendar. There are other calendars that do still exist, and they're used in different parts of the world to keep track of a society's own cultural or religious dates. So, let's look at the examples here. The blue one. That's around 1865 on this timeline. That was the date of Abraham Lincoln's assassination. Now, if you look here, almost on top of the 1, Jesus is believed to have been born between 6 and 4 BCE, not square up on 1. And of course, going backwards into BCE, Alexander the Great died in June 323 BCE. So it's fairly easy to read a timeline. Sometimes you'll see timelines that go up and down. Sometimes you'll see them in a spiral. But most often, if the page is big enough or the space is big enough, you'll see them just in a straight numerical line. Now, just to give you a little perspective, this is not to scale by any means. In the black is the prehistoric age, which is what we're going to be talking about today. 2.5 million years to around 3500 BCE. That's about 2.5 million years long. That's pretty substantial. And in the blue, the ancient age, which started around 3500 BCE and goes all the way into the Common Era to 476, the fall of the Roman Empire. Now, that lasted around 4,000 years. Pretty substantial time. Now, as far as the medieval age, that again lasted around 1,000 years. And then we have just a short period of time for the Renaissance, the Age of Enlightenment, moving across the oceans into the Americas, finding the New World. That only lasted 300 years. And for modernity, the modern age, starting around the French Revolution, we've really only been modern for about 230 years. That's where we are now. That's pretty substantial, and that's why we want to look at the prehistoric age to give you an idea of how we got to where we are now. Now, reading maps. You've seen maps, you've seen the continents, you've seen world maps, but I find it's always best to know where we're talking about. Of course, we're going to start here in Africa. In Africa is where the first species or genus Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, and Homo sapiens, that's where we got our start and migrated from. You have the seven main continents: Africa, Europe, Asia. These are the first settlements of humans. And then they go, of course, down into Australia and over from Asia across the land bridge into North America and South America. You have the five oceans. Up top is the Arctic Ocean, super cold. Down south by Antarctica is the Southern Ocean. Now, when I was in school, we call it the Antarctic Ocean, but around 2000, scientists, the Geological Society, got together and renamed it the Southern Ocean. Okay, of course, between North America and Europe and Africa and South America and Africa is the Atlantic. And below Asia is the Indian Ocean. And of course, from the west coast of North America and South America all the way to Asia and Australia, we have the Pacific Ocean. Easy breezy, right? Let's look at this map. Looking at the migration patterns of early humans. Like I said, we started in Africa. Okay, Africa, all the way up into Europe, Asia, Australia, and finally into North America and South America. Now, if you'll see here the timeline on this, the different colored lines denotes when scientists have discovered fossils and dated them so that you can know, hey, these particular people were here at this time. Now, let's look at this kind of timeline. 4.4 million years ago. Ardi. Ardi is somebody you'll learn about in prehistory, anthropology. It's the Ardipithecus ramidus. It's the earliest hominid fossil. And scientists discovered her in Ethiopia, or right outside of Ethiopia. Now, she is a pre-human hominid. She is not a modern human. She is a 4'11", around 4 feet. Likely weighed about 120 pounds. And she walked upright. And she used tools. That's pretty cool. 2.5 million years ago, earliest evidence of stone tools, which is pretty cool. And of course, the earliest genus Homo, around 2 million years ago. Now, about 1 million years ago, modern humans, pre-modern humans, started to spread out of Africa. And about 800,000 years ago, fire. They discovered fire. And of course, 200,000 years ago, the first Homo sapiens sapiens, modern humans, East Africa. And that's when the migration started to begin. This is a prehistory, around 200,000 years ago. This is when we start learning more about them because they start displaying signs of burying their dead, using art, religion, and they start migrating and taking these things with them. The other people that they meet along the way, they share their culture with. Now, around 7,000 years ago, we start with the Neolithic Revolution. This is cool. Look at Object A. These are the tools that we find. They were hunting. They were fishing. They were sewing. They were making tools to make their life easier. They started agriculture. They began mashing their grains and baking bread. Figure B is a fertility icon. And in C, this is from Çatalhöyük in Turkey. And these are paintings on the walls of their city. You'll see more about that in a little bit. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is the elephant in the room. In every prehistory class I've ever been in or been involved with in any way, when we talk about evolution and the theory of natural selection, they're always hot button topics. Some faiths denounce evolution, but I propose science and religion do not have to be at odds. Where does it say in any religious text, in any religion, that evolution did not happen? It doesn't. In fact, the gods in every religious text were constantly involved in human affairs, making them better people, helping them to learn, make better choices, go conquer this land, improve, involve yourself in laws and tools. Some gods gave them fire, some instructed them in what to eat, what not to eat, and these rules and gifts resulted in a more sentient, wise humankind, a changed human being for the better. Now, that is kind of the definition of evolution. So I want you to keep in mind that these earlier hominids, pre-humans, they did exist. Whether some people think they were created on the spot as is, or that they evolved over millions and millions and millions of years, there is proof in the fossil and archaeological record of their existence and their changes over time. They did walk upright, use tools, discover fire for warmth as well as cooking other animals. And just a side note, this change in nutrition resulted in a larger brain and improved cognitive skills. The genus Homo is human, and what most people consider modern humans have been around based on fossil evidence for about 200,000 years. One more note. Remember, humans, humanoids, prehumans, hominids, they're just man-made labels arbitrarily agreed upon. Humans belong to the mammal group. We're all blood, bone, organs, eyeballs, tissues, muscles, cells, so we all are in a sense related because of these biological and chemical makeup. Mammals and other animal groups too can all reason to a certain extent, exhibit emotions, communicate, and we all have the same basic survival needs: food, shelter, and sex. What makes humans, or modern humans, different is our ability to speak common languages, share common religious belief systems, share our culture and traditions with others, use tools, and to learn and invent at rapid paces. So, with that in mind, let's continue. Prehistory. Prehistory is the time before written history. How can we know this? Well, we can look at the geological record. That's looking at the layers of the earth. Geologists can look at the layers and tell what happened as far as natural events, natural disasters, erosion, weathering, and we can also tell by what's in those layers. That's where archaeologists and anthropologists come in. Paleontologists. We have fossils of organisms, animals, prehumans and humans. We have ruins and artifacts. We have pieces of tools, homes, buildings, graves, monuments, cave drawings, even charred bones of humans and animals, and carbon evidence of fire. And you will know it better as the Stone Age. First, we start with the Paleolithic Age. Paleolithic, that's a word we get from two different Greek words. Paleo means old, and lithos means stone. Now, the Paleolithic Age lasted from about 2.5 million years ago until about 20 to 10,000 years ago. That depends on where the events were happening. Some regions lasted longer in the Paleolithic Age, some shorter time. And this age shows the earliest stone tools, the use of fire, and we begin to see evidence of burials and art, even music, and more sophisticated tools, like in the picture above, choppers and scrapers and hand axes. This, what you're looking at, is a hand axe. They would take rocks and beat the sides to make it sharp. They could scrape the hides of animals. They could cut things. They could use it for a weapon. And remember, this is a cold age. These are humanoids who began the migration from Africa into other continents through land bridges, through water, on foot, and it's icy. Up until about 10,000 BCE, it's still icy, and they are following food. Now, transitioning into the Mesolithic Age. Again, two Greek words, meso meaning middle and lithos meaning stone. These dates depend on location. 20,000 roughly to 3,000 BCE. This is the decline of the nomadic way of life, where they're following the food, following the sources. This brings the onset of civilization and agriculture in the next age. The Mesolithic overlaps both the Paleolithic and the Neolithic Stone Age, and it all depends on where the advances took place, some earlier, some later. So let's look at the Paleo and Mesolithic ages. They were hunter-gatherers. They would gather berries and fruits and nuts for eating. The hunters would fish. That was the easiest way. Less likely to get killed fishing. And of course they would hunt the big game, the bison, the mammoths, the saber-toothed tigers, whatever animal was in the area. They were nomadic. They moved to where the animals and the foods were. Now, given that they were nomadic, their house was on their back, their tools were on their backs, their babies were on their backs. They carried what they owned on their backs when they moved. We know this because of the burial sites. There were no social distinctions based on wealth or gender. Everyone had a role important to the survival of the group, and women were able to do more gathering, to do more in the society because the fertility rate was pretty low. How do we know this? Because of the burial sites, because of geology and archaeology. The groups who banded together were usually extended or immediate families, 15 to 20 people. When they moved, only the healthy and those able to travel moved with them when they went to a new food source. It's survival. Now, I mentioned the fertility rates. There was a low birth rate due to the nomadic lifestyles. Moving, improper nutrition, these things played a key role in the female's fertility. And this group only produced 12% of all humans in recorded history. We also start to see the introduction of art and decoration and religion. Now keep in mind also, the climate is growing increasingly warmer, the ice is beginning to thaw, oceans are rising and eradicating land bridges. Now, let's look at the religious part of it, the cave paintings. These cave paintings are from Lascaux.
Woolly mammoths, steppe bison, and other large mammals once roamed alongside people across Eurasia. Tens of thousands of years later, we may have a glimpse into this Ice Age world through the cave art left behind by early humans. Around 400 art-filled caves and shelters, predominantly located in France and Spain, have been discovered so far. Some of the most elaborate prehistoric artwork exists in caves in France, known as Lascaux Grotto and Chauvet Pont d'Arc. Cave art dates as far back as 65,000 years ago to the time of the Neanderthals. Though, radiocarbon dating and other methods have revealed most art to be less than 40,000 years old and created by Homo sapiens. The majority of cave art depicts animals that humans would have encountered or hunted during the Ice Age, such as mammoths, horses, lions, aurochs, and deer. Some human figures and other symbols have also been discovered. Cave paintings were mostly created with red or black pigments made from rocks. Some artworks were painted directly onto cave walls, while some were first engraved into the stone with tools. Occasionally, the artists would follow the natural contours of the stone walls to accentuate an animal's features. Ever since the late 1800s, people have debated the meaning and purpose of cave art. Some scholars think cave paintings were created by shamans who would go deep into caves and enter a trance-like state, drawing animals they encountered in the spirit world. Symbols repeated across artworks may indicate that those symbols had agreed-upon meanings among the artists. Thus, perhaps cave art also represents the earliest form of graphic communication. In reality, cave art may have been created for a variety of reasons. While we may never know with absolute certainty why cave art was made or the meaning behind individual paintings, these works give us insight into the evolving minds of our prehistoric ancestors and the world in which they lived. By one view, cave artists were prehistoric naturalists. Their detailed drawings may teach us about the appearance and behavior of animals that have long been extinct. But perhaps more significant, a part of our never-ending quest to find out who we are and where we came from, cave art may provide evidence of a time when humans were first able to etch their thoughts in stone.
Now, pretty cool, right? Now, let's go on into the Neolithic Age. Of course, two Greek words, neo means new and lithos means stone. We also can call this the Neolithic Revolution because, honestly, it is a revolution. Going from pre-modern humans to the genus Homo to modern humanity, Homo sapiens, it began and ended at varying times, again, depending on the region. So generally, people agree between 10 and 9000 BCE to about 3500 BCE. And by this time, the Homo sapiens were the only group of humans left. Neanderthals probably survived up until the beginning of the Neolithic Age, but no further. We don't know if they just went extinct or if they bred with modern Homo sapiens and just created the new version. This age brought about permanent settlements, sedentary lifestyles, agriculture, domestication of animals, and much larger groups of people. So many advances in tools and technology. It also created social and wealth-based strata, and of course political, religious, and cultural development. So, let's talk about that. What do you need to create a sedentary civilization? Number one answer, every time, water. Fresh water. Every single ancient and prehistoric civilization was always by a river valley. Every time. Why? Agriculture, irrigation. Let's look at it. In Mesopotamia, by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. In the Levant, which is Israel, Palestine, the Jordan River. Egypt, the Nile River, North America, the Mississippi River, China, the Yellow River, India, the Ganges, South America, the Amazon. Why? Because these rivers would flood and deposit rich silt and minerals good for agriculture after the waters receded. It was also usually a flat plain. It was good for building permanent houses, permanent settlements. It was good for letting other grasses and crops grow. Not just for humans, but for the animals that they were domesticating. Now let's look at the agriculture. Now, women are presumed to have been the ones to discover this because they were likely the gatherers. They were the ones picking, and maybe the first agricultural crops were types of grains like wheat and millet and spelt. Now, here is a settlement on the island of Cyprus, right in the middle of the, right off the Levant. It's in the Greek, it's a Greek island. So let's take a look at this. This one also is pretty informative and is called Karakoitia. Now, Karakoitia was in operation from about 9000 and then they disappeared suddenly in 6000 BCE. Okay, now it had a slight wall around it, and we're not sure if it was to keep the animals in or to protect the people. All of these huts that you're going to be seeing, some were flat topped and had a ladder up to the roof, or maybe even a second level, and some were dome shaped on the top. As you can see, there is vegetation here. Olives, pistachios, nuts, a few fruits, wheat. Look at how thick these walls were. And they even created steps going up to and into some of the homesteads. Now, some of the scholars believe that These were individual rooms, and the courtyard was the center of the home. We have fire pits, wells, and even inside the structures, you'll see different places that people would do different things, whether it was sleeping, storing things. And in the center of the structure, they buried their dead. It's pretty amazing, right? And we think that there was no more than 300 people in the society here. And we know that they had sheep, dogs, and pigs. We also know from the skeletons that most of the people were really short. The men about 5'3", the women about 4'11". And based on their bones and the tests, they lived to a median age of about 35 years old. Now, farming is difficult. You have to clear the land and create tools for tilling, planting, and harvesting. The domestication of animals were for hunting assistance, food sources, and also agricultural assistance, hauling the crops, plowing the land. You are dependent on the cycles of nature for food production. And this is where we see the rise of nature-based and ritualistic religions. Early humans saw everything through the lens of religion. Food. No rain for crops, the gods are angry. We must sacrifice to the gods. Did the floods wipe out the crops? Gods are angry. We must sacrifice to the gods. Everything good? Yay, the gods are pleased. Let's sacrifice to the gods. Let's paint homages in caves, make tiny sculptures so the gods know where to send us. Shelter. We have shelters, so the gods need shelter too. Religious structures are being utilized. We know this from the caves. We know this from the man-made buildings with the religious artifacts that were left behind. Sex and fertility. Need a mate. Need a baby. Make a fertility icon. Sacrifice to the gods. Paint homages of what you need. And this is also where we see the invention of more advanced tools. Settlements are becoming way more permanent and bigger and bigger and bigger. There's government, priesthoods, and class strata. Why? Well, population explosion is one reason. There's so many people. You have to build more buildings. You need somebody to tell you what to do, to tell you how to sacrifice to the gods. And of course, some people are going to have more than others. Why? Tools were becoming more technological for specific purposes. Agricultural, weaving, sewing, cooking, art, and building. Structures were being made of mud bricks rather than simply wood and grass or animal hides. Structures were being assigned specific purposes: homes, storage facilities, meeting places, markets, religious buildings. Now, let's take a look at Çatalhöyük. This is a Neolithic settlement in Turkey, and it was around maybe 7000 BCE. Notice the picture here. The picture is designed based on the archaeological excavation. There were no streets or roads. It was by a river valley. There's evidence of farming. There's evidence of domesticated animals. But how they got around was on the rooftops, going down into via ladders. And some of these buildings were more than 1 story high. Let's take a look.
This is Çatalhöyük. It is an ancient civilization located in modern-day Turkey as shown in these maps. It was built in about 6500 BC. Archaeologists have explored its location and have discovered pottery, murals, human and animal remains, and tools. By using the walls, archaeologists are able to trace out rooms and then search the rooms for artifacts. They gently excavated the objects and painstakingly cleaned them without damaging them. These are two of the processes that archaeologists are using to excavate artifacts from Catalhoyuk. There are many questions that we still have that we haven't answered yet, such as what the paintings meant, and why their dead were buried in the floor. The artifacts give small clues by hinting at religion as well as daily life back then.
Wow. Again, another society that buried their dead in the center of the floor. Interesting. Now, what this allowed to happen was leisure time. While farming is truly hard work, my grandpa was a farmer. I know, I often helped him in the summertime. It also freed up a lot of time that was used to spend hunting and gathering. Leisure time is here because we have more advanced technologies in agriculture. Work had become specialized. Not everybody is farming. Some people are masons for mud bricks. Some people are builders or artists or priests. Some people oversee the excess crops, which leads to selling excess crops. There are tool makers, weapons makers, elders, leaders. People are settling, their diets are steady, and this increases the birth rate and populations expand exponentially. This also leads to the formation of transportation and trade. There are wheels, there are wagons, there are boats. And once you have several hundred to several thousand people together, you need government and regulations. You need currency. And then now there are few egalitarian societies, but societies based on class and wealth. Now, final thoughts on prehistory. We're going now into the Metal Age, the Copper Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. What does it take to make a civilization? Given the population explosion, how would the roles of women change? What do you do when people want your stuff or you want somebody else's stuff? Who decided who is worthy to lead an entire group? How do you create that first logistical plan to make the group? And by group, I mean city, because they are small cities. How do you make them run smoothly? Who had the idea to say, let's improve upon this plow, let's improve upon this hand axe? How and why? They had walls. Why did they need walls? Writing. When did writing branch out from administrative to duties like recording taxes, census, to inspirational and academic purposes? And who first thought it was a good idea to write down the deeds of mankind? We're going to talk about him. And when did religion become the driving force in a community? Now, for more information on the Stone Age and earlier eras, consider studying geology and anthropology. I promise it will give you a very, very in-depth look at more than meets the eye. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you.